Thursday, October 16th, 2025. Welcome to the Noticias El Salvador SV podcast, a space for conversation and reflection where we explore current issues from El Salvador and the world together. Find us on your favorite platform. You can collaborate with or donate to help produce this podcast through PayPal or via Bitcoin QR code. You will find the PayPal link in the content description and the Bitcoin QR code on the cover of this episode. Remember to state the reason for your payment in the subject line, something like donation, collaboration, talk about the topic I like. For the coffee, this is for internal control purposes. End preamble. Welcome to the deep dive.
Today, we're really digging into a fascinating day. October 16th, 2025. It was a day of, well, really stark contrast, wasn't it?
Absolutely. You had these huge global power plays unfolding, talk of peace even, right alongside escalating military actions and some really tough local stories coming out of El Salvador.
Yeah, exactly. On one side, you've got the United States and Russia talking about ending the war in Ukraine, and then, covert ops ramping up elsewhere, plus serious economic injustice issues right here. It's sort of a microcosm of the world right now, I think. These big diplomatic shifts happening at the same time as these very real, very immediate struggles over, food prices, human rights, basic security.
So our mission today, really, is to try and weave these threads together for you. Diplomacy, security, governance, justice. Make sense of how they all connect on this specific day.
Right. So you don't just get the headlines, but the context.
Yeah.
Why this stuff matters.
And the headline that just dominated everything globally, the one setting a potentially new course, was this major diplomatic pivot involving the United States and Russia.
That phone call.
Let's jump right into it. The conversation between President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. It was described as productive.
Productive is, well, it's diplomatic language, isn't it? But yeah, after years of pretty frosty relations and stalled talks, this call definitely felt different.
It did, and crucially, it explicitly linked success in the Middle East, whatever that might entail, to breaking the deadlock over Ukraine. What should we make of the actual White House statement?
Well, the language itself signals something shifted. It's aspirational, definitely, but it's moving beyond just stating positions. There's a sense of maybe momentum.
Okay, so the core text we have from the communique, I'll read it directly. Acabo de concluir mi conversación telefónica con el presidente de Rusia, Vladimir Putin, y fue muy productiva. Creo, de hecho, que este éxito en Medio Oriente ayudará en nuestras negociaciones para poner fin a la guerra entre Rusia y Ucrania.
And that phrase right there, this success in the Middle East will help in our negotiations. That's the absolute crux of it. It implies some kind of major, perhaps previously unpublicized achievement in the Middle East is now being used as leverage or a foundation for the Ukraine talks.
Interesting. And Putin apparently leaned into this framing?
He did. He congratulated Trump and the United States on what he called a great achievement of reaching peace in the Middle East, something he apparently said had been dreamed of for centuries.
Wow, dreamed of for centuries. That's high praise, especially given the context.
It really is. It suggests a significant amount of diplomatic goodwill, or maybe capital, was either generated or spent to get to this point. It's quite a statement.
It's remarkable, isn't it, considering the backdrop? But they didn't just stop at praise, did they? They moved on to concrete next steps, even talked economics.
Yeah, they actually spent time discussing future trade between Russia and the United States, which is, looking way down the road, assuming the war in Ukraine ends.
A big assumption, but still.
A very big assumption. But planning for it suggests some confidence. And more immediately, they agreed to have high-level advisor meetings start next week.
Okay, who's leading that for the United States?
Secretary of State Marco Rubio is heading the delegation. So that looks like laying the technical groundwork, the sort of bureaucratic prep work needed before the leaders meet.
Right, setting the stage for the main event. And that main event is planned for Budapest, Hungary.
That's the one. A face-to-face summit between Trump and Putin, the stated goal. To discuss ending what they both apparently called the inglorious war in Ukraine.
Inglorious. That word choice seems really deliberate.
Oh, absolutely. Inglorious is political framing. It allows both sides, maybe Putin especially, to look for a way out without having to frame it as a clear win or loss. It sort of paints the war as this messy, drawn-out thing that's just time to end, rather than, say, a strategic victory or defeat.
And the location, Budapest. Why Hungary?
Well, Hungary, under Prime Minister Viktor Orban, has often been seen as, more sympathetic to Moscow's perspective compared to other European Union capitals. So it provides a kind of neutral ground, but one perhaps slightly friendlier to Russia outside the main Western European diplomatic channels. It suggests they're serious about trying to bypass some of the usual pressures.
Makes sense. It signals a real attempt to find a different path. But isn't the big elephant in the room here Ukraine itself?
That's the tension, isn't it?
They're talking about ending their war using this inglorious framing. But what does Kyiv think? It sounds a bit like the big powers deciding things over their heads.
And that's precisely the concern. It looks like a potential resolution, yes, but the terms might be dictated more by Washington and Moscow's interests than Kyiv's.
Which makes Trump's next scheduled meeting even more critical.
Exactly. He announced he's meeting President Zelensky tomorrow, October 17th, at the Oval Office.
So Zelensky essentially gets briefed after the fact, told about the plan for his country's future.
That's how it appears. He'll hear about the Putin conversation, maybe other topics too, but it puts him in an incredibly difficult position. A very, very delicate meeting, you'd have to imagine.
Absolutely. Okay, so while the superpowers are talking peace, or at least talking about peace talks, the conflicts and covert stuff haven't stopped. Let's shift to Yemen. A key Houthi figure was taken out.
Yes, confirmation came through on the death of Mohammed Abd al-Karim al-Ghamari. He was the chief of staff for the Houthi movement.
How did they report it?
The official Houthi statement said he died while fulfilling his duties, which usually implies killed in action, likely a targeted strike drone, missile, something like that.
Did they blame anyone specific?
Not directly, interestingly. They didn't point the finger straight at Israel in the initial announcement, but they immediately followed up with a vow that Tel Aviv would be punished for, quote, crimes committed. So the implication is pretty clear.
And this al-Ghamari, he wasn't just some administrator, right? He was significant militarily.
Oh, absolutely critical. Reports describe him as a key figure, maybe the key figure, behind their attacks on shipping in the Red Sea, and also behind the drone and missile launches aimed at Israel. Losing him is a major blow to their operational capability.
And did Israel comment?
Well, the Israeli Minister of Defense, Israel Katz, made a statement that seemed pretty pointed. He said, "Hemos actuado considerablemente contra los hutíes para eliminar amenazas significativas." Basically saying they've acted significantly against the Houthis to eliminate threats and will continue to do so.
So reading between the lines.
Reading between the lines, it strongly points to Israeli involvement. It fits their pattern of targeting key leadership to degrade the capabilities of groups like the Houthis.
Okay, back to the Ukraine situation. Despite the Trump-Putin call, the United States is actually sending more advanced weapons. Tomahawk cruise missiles.
Yes, but this is where it gets really interesting and complicated. They are sending Tomahawks, but with some really unusual strings attached.
Strings? Like what?
The big one is that the Ukrainian military won't actually operate or maintain these missiles themselves.
Wait, how does that work? Who fires them then?
United States contractors. The plan is for private U.S. contractors to handle all the management and maintenance. It's all about protecting the sensitive technology inside these missiles. They're described as having black boxes.
Black boxes? Like on an airplane?
Sort of, but in this context, it refers to the really classified stuff, the guidance systems, the targeting software, the navigation tech like Turcom, which lets the missile hug the terrain. It's the brain of the missile.
And the fear is Russia capturing one?
Exactly. If Russia got their hands on an intact Tomahawk, or even a damaged one, and could reverse engineer that tech, it would be a massive intelligence loss for the United States. It would compromise a major strategic advantage.
So the contractors are there purely to keep the tech secure, like guardians of the intellectual property.
Pretty much. They ensure the Ukrainians get the ability to hit targets far away, but without giving them, or potentially Russia, access to the most secret parts of the weapon.
And the number of missiles is small initially.
Very small. Reports say the first shipments are just 20 to 50 missiles. That's way less than Kyiv asked for.
Which reinforces the idea of caution.
Right. It's a calibrated step, increasing Ukraine's reach, signaling continued support, but doing it very carefully to manage escalation risks and protect that core technology.
This theme of controlled escalation and covert action seems pretty widespread on this day. We also learned about a secret authorization affecting Latin America.
Yes, this is potentially huge. News emerged that the Trump administration secretly authorized the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, to conduct covert operations, potentially including lethal actions in the Southern Caribbean and actually inside Venezuelan territory.
Lethal actions by the CIA inside Venezuela. Under what justification?
The stated goal is part of a campaign of pressure, targeting drug cartels and significantly, the government of Nicolas Maduro itself.
So it's blurring the lines between counter-narcotics and regime pressure.
That's exactly why analysts are calling this a point of inflection. For years, the United States has done intel gathering, surveillance, drug interdiction in the region. But authorizing lethal covert ops on Venezuelan soil, even under an anti-drug banner, is a major escalation.
What does point of inflection really mean here? How is it different?
It means opening the door to actions that could look a lot like direct intervention. Targeted killings, sabotage, supporting proxy forces, things that go way beyond just chasing drug smugglers. It uses the anti-drug fight as potential cover for actions aimed at destabilizing the Maduro government.
That sounds like something that would definitely put Caracas on high alert.
Extremely high alert. And maybe it's no coincidence that on this same day, Venezuela experienced a naval incident.
What happened?
The Venezuelan Navy transport ship, the ARV T-61 Capana, ran aground and subsequently sank off the coast of Falcon State. Apparently, it had just participated in defense exercises specifically designed, reports say, to counter a potential United States invasion.
Wow. So whether it was bad luck, poor maintenance, or an operational error during drills prompted by this heightened tension, losing a ship right now looks really bad.
It underscores the pressure they feel they're under, that sense of siege you mentioned.
And just to round out the global picture, President Trump also made some waves regarding South American politics.
Yes, a very direct, very unusual public statement regarding Argentina. He threatened the country with unspecified consequences if President Javier Milei doesn't win the upcoming elections.
Threatening consequences based on an election result. That's blunt.
Extremely blunt. Normally, that kind of pressure is applied behind the scenes through diplomatic channels or economic hints. To just say it out loud is highly aggressive. It signals a willingness to directly interfere, or at least appear to interfere, in the democratic process of another country to ensure a preferred outcome, a really assertive geopolitical stance.
Okay, let's bring our focus back home now to El Salvador. We need to pivot from those global chess moves to the really fundamental issues affecting people here, starting with the economy and specifically the cost of living, the alza de precios.
Yeah, the price hikes. It's hitting hard.
It really is. We saw reports, quite alarming ones actually, from the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization. They estimate that 3 million Salvadorans are currently facing food insecurity.
3 million. That's a huge portion of the population.
It's staggering, and it's not some abstract number. It's driven by the rising cost of basic necessities, food, cooking oil, everything. We're hearing calls from campesinos, the farmers, for more food sovereignty, trying to find ways to cope with this deepening crisis, especially in rural areas. It's putting immense strain on families.
And, this current pressure, the struggle to afford basic goods, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's directly relevant when you look back at, how state resources were managed in the past.
What's the connection you're drawing?
The connection is about lost opportunity, about money that could have been available now to cushion these shocks or invest in solutions. News reports today highlighted a really painful historical fact. El Salvador, the state, lost almost $2.7 billion. That's $2,695.2 million, to be precise, just from gold sales during past governments.
$2.7 billion from gold. Which administrations are we talking about?
Primarily during the ARENA and FMLN administrations. The sales often happened, let's say, under less than ideal conditions, maybe volatile markets, maybe opaque deals resulting in the natural gold reserves being sold off too cheaply, or the profits not being used effectively, or worse.
So that $2.7 billion is money that just vanished, money that could be making a difference now.
Exactly. Imagine having that kind of buffer today. It could have been invested in agriculture, subsidies, infrastructure, helping to stabilize prices or support those 3 million people facing food insecurity. It's a heavy piece of historical baggage, a reminder of squandered potential.
It's a stark contrast then to some of the economic news we also saw today, which seems focused on looking forward towards new sectors.
Absolutely. Despite that difficult history, there are definite signs of trying to pivot. We saw figures showing El Salvador now has over 2,000 digital startups and entrepreneurs.
2,000? That's quite a number.
It is. It points towards building an economy based more on tech, on innovation, rather than just traditional industries or resources. And alongside that, there was a concrete investment announcement.
What was that?
A company called Atomex is investing $13.5 million in the first phase of expanding the air cargo terminal at the international airport.
So focusing on logistics, trade infrastructure.
Right. Both the digital startups and the cargo investment suggest a strategy trying to build a more modern, diversified economy. One hopefully less vulnerable to the kind of commodity issues like gold prices that hurt the country in the past.
And complementing that modernization push, there's a move towards green energy too.
A big one. The government submitted a request to the Assembly to approve a new law specifically designed to boost renewable energy.
What's in the law? What kind of incentives?
It sounds pretty comprehensive. It includes proposals for 10-year tax exemptions and other incentives covering everything from commercializing renewable tech to installing and maintaining the equipment.
So, a decade of tax breaks to encourage solar, wind, whatever it might be.
That seems to be the idea. It signals a serious long-term bet on renewable energy, not just for environmental reasons, but as a core part of future economic strategy and energy independence.
Okay, shifting gears a bit to governance and finance, there was news about fiscal amnesties being approved.
Yes, the National Assembly gave the green light to broad fiscal amnesties. Basically, taxpayers get a 60-day window to settle up old debts and fines with the government without facing penalties.
Why do governments do that? Just to get some quick cash in?
That's often a big part of it, yeah. It encourages people and businesses to clear their books, brings in revenue quickly, and helps clean up the government's own accounts. And it wasn't just at the national level, right?
No, 3 municipalities also approved similar local amnesties for property owners and market renters specifically. So a push for compliance across the board.
Seems like it. A coordinated effort to get outstanding debt settled.
All right, now turning to a key institutional role, the Human Rights Ombudsman. There was a significant decision today.
Indeed. Raquel Caballero was re-elected to the post. It's her 3rd term as Procuradora for the Defense of Human Rights.
A 3rd term is quite something. Did she make a statement?
She did. She mentioned assuming the role again with a great commitment towards human dignity.
Okay. But this re-election wasn't without controversy, was it?
Not at all. Almost immediately, reports surfaced criticizing the decision. The core criticism revolves around her perceived, quote,
silence in the face of state abuses. What's the context for that criticism?
It generally relates to her perceived lack of public action or strong statements during periods where state security measures, like mass detentions under the state of exception, have drawn criticism from other rights groups. The argument from critics is that the Human Rights Ombudsman needs to be a vocal, independent check on potential state overreach, and they feel she hasn't been.
So it raises questions about the independence and effectiveness of the institution itself.
That's the heart of the debate. Is the Procuraduría functioning as a truly independent watchdog? Or has it become too aligned with the government's position? Her re-election definitely keeps that debate alive.
Got it. Just quickly touching back on infrastructure, any update on the airport project?
Yeah, a small update on the international airport of El Salvador. The construction of the new baggage carousel terminal is apparently now 35% complete.
Okay, so progress continues there, tied into that whole modernization effort we talked about.
Exactly. It's all part of upgrading the facility for both passengers and that air cargo push.
And one last piece on institutional matters, something about false certificate.
Yes, this came from INABVE, that's the Instituto Administrador de Beneficios de Veteranos y Excombatientes, the body that handles benefits for veterans and ex-combatants.
What did they do?
They formally denounced 1,444 cases of false certificates to the Attorney General's office, the FGR.
Wow, over 1,400 potentially fraudulent claims for benefits.
Seems so. It highlights a serious ongoing problem with fraud within state benefit systems. It requires legal action to ensure that genuine veterans get their benefits and that public money isn't being siphoned off through fake claims.
Okay, quite a lot happening on the economic and governance fronts here in El Salvador. Before we move into some very difficult but important local justice cases from October 16th, just a quick reminder. If you're finding this deep dive valuable, if you appreciate us sorting through all this detail, please consider supporting our work.
Yeah, your support really does help us keep doing this.
You can collaborate or donate through PayPal. The link is right there in the description of this audio, or by using the Bitcoin QR code, which you'll find on the cover image for this deep dive. Any contribution helps us continue producing this content.
All right, this next part, it takes us right into the courtroom and onto the streets. We're looking at specific criminal cases and security incidents from October 16th that really underscore the harsh realities faced by some communities and the judicial system's response.
We have to start with an incredibly disturbing case from Ahuachapansur. The details are just horrific, involving attempted femicide, torture, and forced abortion.
Yes, this was the sentencing of Jonathan Edgardo Sanchez Magana. A specialized court in Santa Ana handed him a sentence of 43 years in prison.
43 years. For what specific crimes again?
Attempted femicide, abortion without consent, and deprivation of liberty, all committed against his partner. The court really emphasized the extreme cruelty involved.
The details of what happened in San Francisco, Menendez, they're hard to hear, but important to understand the sentence.
They are. The victim, who was pregnant at the time, was held captive for 14 days. During that time, she was chained up, repeatedly tortured, burned with an iron, beaten with tools, and forced to ingest some kind of harmful concoctions, bredes.
And this abuse led to the loss of her pregnancy.
Yes. Tragically, it resulted in the loss of her baby. The court treated that forced abortion as a separate, very serious crime, which contributed significantly to that long 43-year sentence.
And chillingly, he didn't act entirely alone, did he? His mother was involved.
That's right. His mother, Alma America Magana de Sanchez, was also convicted. She received a 5-year sentence.
For doing what? Was she involved in the torture?
Not directly in the physical acts, according to the court. Her conviction was as a necessary accomplice. Her role was essentially surveillance, watching the victim constantly to make sure she couldn't escape or call for help while her son was abusing her.
So the court found her essential to enabling the crime.
Exactly. It sends a strong message that facilitating or even just standing by and enabling such horrific abuse carries serious criminal consequences. Apparently, the victim only managed to escape when the mother let her guard down for a moment, allowing her to run to neighbors who called the police.
Just an absolutely terrible case. Okay, shifting to a different kind of crime, but still involving manipulation and fear and extortion case in Cabañas.
Yes, this involved 2 women, Fabia Stephanie Molina Melendez and Julia Irina Ramirez Rosales. They were both sentenced to 10 years for aggravated extortion.
How were they extorting people? What was their method?
It was purely psychological terror, conducted over the phone using international numbers. They didn't use physical threats directly, but relied on invoking the name of a powerful criminal organization.
Which one?
They pretended to be members of the Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación, the CJNG from Mexico.
Wow. So they'd call victims claiming to be from CJNG.
Exactly. They'd make these terrifying calls, threatening the victims with death, even claiming they had snipers watching their houses at that very moment.
Yeah.
Pure psychological warfare.
Yes, people paid them out of fear?
Yes. At least one victim was so terrified for their life and their family's safety that they deposited nearly $1,000 into an account as demanded.
How did the police catch them?
Good investigative work. They managed to trace the threatening international calls back to a phone registered to Stephanie Molina Melendez. And then they tracked the bank deposits, the extorted money, going into an account belonging to Julia Irina Ramirez Rosales. That link between the calls and the money sealed the case.
10 years. A significant sentence for that kind of remote terror.
It reflects the severity of using that kind of cartel association to instill fear, even without direct physical violence.
Separately, there was also a grim discovery reported in La Libertad.
Yes, unfortunately. Search teams recovered the body of a woman, Ana Yamaleth Cabrera, from inside a septic tank in the area of Telnique, La Libertad.
From a septic tank. What are the circumstances?
Details are still emerging, but authorities are treating it as a homicide investigation. The recovery itself, under those circumstances, strongly suggests foul play. It's another reminder of the localized violence that continues to be a challenge.
And finally, on the social justice front, there's an ongoing issue involving families of people deported from the United States.
That's right. It's the continued struggle of families searching for relatives who were deported back to El Salvador. Specifically, there are ongoing denunciations about at least 6 individuals who families believe are being held in Salvadoran prisons after deportation, but they can't get any official confirmation.
So people are deported, they arrive back in El Salvador, and then they just disappear into the system.
That's the family's fear and frustration. They believe their loved ones are incarcerated, possibly caught up in sweeps of this state of exception, or for other reasons upon arrival. But the authorities are reportedly providing no information, no location, no status, just silence.
Can you give an example?
There's the case of a young man named Irvin, 24 years old. He was deported back in March. His family, who had lived in the United States for 9 years, actually moved back to El Salvador just to try and find him.
They came back to look for him.
Yes. And they say they've just hit a wall of silence, bureaucratic runaround. It creates terrible anxiety and, frankly, deep mistrust when families can't even confirm if their deported loved one is safe or where they're being held. It's a real humanitarian issue bubbling under the surface.
Okay, let's broaden our review again now, moving into the digital world. A major battle flared up on October 16th over online privacy, pitting the messaging app Telegram against the European Union.
Yeah, this was a big one, especially for anyone using encrypted messaging apps. Telegram actually sent out an alert, like a mass message, to all of its users in France.
An alert? What about?
About a proposed law in the European Union they were calling chat control. Essentially, this law, if it had passed, would have forced apps like Telegram, Signal, WhatsApp to scan all private messages for certain content, even encrypted messages.
Scan encrypted messages? How would that even work? Doesn't that break the encryption?
That's the core technical problem and the source of the outrage. Critics argued it would essentially require building backdoors into end-to-end encryption, fundamentally undermining user privacy and security for everyone.
And Telegram's alert to French users was strongly worded.
Very strongly. It pulled no punches. Let me read part of what they sent.
Hoy, la Unión Europea casi prohibió tu derecho a la privacidad. Estaba a punto de votar una ley que obligaría a las aplicaciones a escanear cada mensaje privado, convirtiendo el teléfono de cada persona en una herramienta de espionaje.
Turning every person's phone into a spying tool. Wow, that's direct. Extremely direct. They were framing it as an existential threat to privacy.
Who in Europe was pushing for this law? Telegram specifically called out France.
Yes, France was reportedly a major backer. The alert mentioned both former and current French interior ministers, Bruno Retailleau and Laurent Nunez, as supporters of the state getting access to private messages. And it noted that major political parties there, like Les Republicans and President Emmanuel Macron's Renaissance Party, had voted in favor of similar measures previously.
What was Telegram's main argument against it, besides the privacy invasion? Did they think it would actually stop criminals?
Their argument was basically, this won't stop the bad guys, it'll only hurt regular people. They argued that serious criminals and terrorists already use sophisticated tools, VPNs, specialized software, maybe burner phones to hide their tracks. They wouldn't be relying on mainstream apps if this scanning was implemented.
So the law would just compromise everyday citizens.
That was their point. It would create huge security risks for ordinary users, potentially exposing their private conversations, while the actual targets would just find other ways to communicate. They also pointed out that government officials and security forces were likely to be exempt from the scanning, which adds a layer of hypocrisy to it.
So this potentially huge surveillance law, what happened to it on October 16th? Did it pass?
No, it failed.
Yeah.
At the last minute, apparently quite unexpectedly, Germany blocked the proposal.
Germany blocked it?
Yes. Their opposition was enough to stop it from moving forward in the EU legislative process, at least for now. Telegram actually credited Germany publicly for saving user privacy.
But Telegram warned the threat isn't gone.
Right. They basically said, we dodged a bullet today, but the fight isn't over. They specifically warned that leaders, particularly in France, are still determined to find ways to get total access to private communications. So the battle over encryption and privacy in Europe seems far from settled.
A really important story to watch. Okay, let's shift to some science and corporate news that also came out on this day, starting with dinosaurs.
Yes, always exciting. Scientists in Argentina announced they'd discovered a completely new species of dinosaur.
What kind?
It's called Huayracursor giganteus. It was a long-necked herbivore living way back in the Triassic period, about 230 million years ago.
Where do they find it?
High up in the Andes, actually, around 3,000 meters altitude in La Rioja province. It's a significant find because it helps scientists understand the very early evolution of these long-necked dinosaurs, the sauropodomorphs, how they started on the path to becoming the giants we know.
Cool. Okay, switching to the corporate world brand value.
Samsung Electronics collects some recognition. The global brand consultancy Interbrand ranked them as the 5th most valuable global brand. Apparently, it's the 6th year in a row they've been in the top 5.
So, consistent performance and brand strength there.
Seems so. This reflects their continued dominance in consumer electronics and technology globally.
And speaking of value, big news related to gold. A discovery.
A very significant one, yes. Reports came out of China about the discovery of a large new gold deposit, estimated to contain more than 40 tons of gold.
40 tons? That's a lot of gold, especially now.
Especially now. This discovery comes at a time when gold prices have been hitting historic highs, recently going over $4,000 an ounce. So finding a major new source of supply like this, amidst high inflation and demand for safe haven assets, is pretty noteworthy globally.
And that high gold price, $4,000 an ounce. It really throws that earlier number about El Salvador's historical losses into sharp relief, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. When you hear about gold trading at these record levels, that $2.7 billion lost from past sales feels even more painful. Imagine if El Salvador still held that gold today at current prices. It would be worth vastly more, providing exactly the kind of economic cushion the country needs right now.
Yeah. The China discovery is good for global markets, maybe, but it's a tough reminder for El Salvador.
A very bitter reminder of what could have been, economically speaking.
Okay, and lastly today, just a quick note from the world of culture and fashion.
Yeah, just a mention of the ongoing debate about body image and fashion. There was some discussion about a perceived return to extreme thinness on some runways.
The thinness trend coming back.
That was the concern raised by some critics, like the French fashion journalist Sophie Fontenelle. But she also pointed to a counterexample, celebrating that the brand Givenchy had included a curve model in one of their recent shows.
So it's still a conversation of push and pull.
Exactly. It just highlights that the discussion around body diversity and representation in high fashion, and the media more broadly, is very much ongoing. Sometimes progressive steps, sometimes seeming steps back. It's still evolving. Hashtag tag outro.
So wrapping up October 16th, 2025, what a day of contrasts. Globally, you had this glimmer of hope, maybe, with the Trump-Putin call. Talk of a summit in Budapest, aiming to end the war in Ukraine.
A huge potential positive. Huge. But then, running right alongside it, you have the opposite impulse.
Yeah.
Deeper conflict, more covert action. The Houthi chief of staff killed, likely by Israel. The United States greenlighting potential CIA lethal ops inside Venezuela. That tension was just palpable.
And that same tension, that push and pull, was mirrored right here in El Salvador, wasn't it?
Absolutely. You see these positive signals, the focus on digital startups, the big push for renewable energy incentives, trying to build a different kind of future economy.
Signs of progress, of looking forward.
Definitely. But grounded by these really difficult present realities. The 3 million people facing food insecurity because of the alza de precios. The shadow of that massive $2.7 billion lost from past gold sales, and the sheer brutality we saw reflected in those local court cases, like that horrifying 43-year sentence in Ahuachapan Sur.
Hope versus hardship, playing out simultaneously.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And maybe that brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to consider. When you put that massive historical loss, the $2.7 billion from gold sales, right next to today's big legislative push for 10-year tax breaks for renewable energy, it really poses a fundamental question for El Salvador's path forward.
Which is?
How much does the country's future economic security really hinge on making that pivot? On rapidly embracing digital innovation and clean energy, and consciously trying to leave behind the legacy, the dependence on those past resource exploits that ultimately didn't secure long-term prosperity? Is the future entirely about building on these new 21st century foundations?
A critical strategic choice, something definitely worth mulling over. Thank you, as always, for helping us unpack all of that today.
My pleasure. It was certainly a dense day of news.
And thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope making sense of these complex events is valuable for you. And one last time, if you do find this work valuable, please consider supporting the production of the Noticias El Salvador SV Deep Dive. You can collaborate or donate via PayPal, the link is in the description, or by using the Bitcoin QR code on the cover of this audio. Your support is truly appreciated and helps us keep going.
We look forward to digging into the next set of important stories with you soon.
Goodbye for now.